Today, our topic is doing a manuscript makeover, and this will be a live editing session of a manuscript that's actually already been published. But there's always room for improvement, and especially when you're writing your scientific articles, there's a lot of key components that you should be aware of, for your manuscript as you're nearing the time when you finally submit your manuscript to your journal of choice. So without any further ado, I'll start sharing my screen. And today, particular focus will be on the abstract. As a journal editor myself, the abstract is one of the most critical components of your manuscript. And just a second here. There we go. I think we got that. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. So yeah, today's session is a live edit of a manuscript. And I'm going to teach you more about how to identify the elements of a well-written manuscript, how to identify if there's any gaps in your manuscript, particularly regarding to clarity, structure, or the native tone of your manuscript. And then we'll get into a live edit. And then finally, I'd like to address any questions you may have. We're streaming this live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So there's going to be questions coming in from there as well. You can also type your questions at the bottom of your screen. Hoping I can address your concerns and doubts that you might have towards the end of your manuscript preparation regarding making your manuscript ready for journal submission, and actually how Editage can help you along in that process. Editage is a great resource for authors, and Editage helps to bridge the gap between authors and peer-reviewed journals. They're armed with a team of over 1,300 employees, and we've been around for more than 20 years, and we've helped over 500,000 researchers get 2 million projects, including lots of manuscripts published in leading journals around the world. So that's a little snapshot about Editage. They also have a lot of great online sources as well. And there's editageinsights.com, and there's some great resources there as well. And here's a little bit about me. I am currently an adjunct professor at Rutgers University and a senior researcher at the Severtsov Institute of Ecology and Evolution and the Russian Academy of Sciences. And I have over 10 years of experience as the editor of integrative zoology. Most of my academic experience has been in China and the USA. And this is a top 5% ranked journal in the field of zoology. And I've handled over 1,000 manuscripts for this journal over the years. So I can speak with some authority on what journal editors look for and how you can improve your manuscript and get it in the best possible shape before submission. So as I mentioned in the introduction, I'd like to teach you today about identifying elements of a well-written manuscript. And then you can look through your manuscript step by step, each part with a special focus on the title and the abstract. And you can learn how to identify if you have any gaps in the structure, clarity, or just the overall tone of your manuscript. Then we'll do the live edit. I'll show you how I would approach a manuscript that after it's submitted to the journal, and we actually recommend a lot of edits actually before we even accept a manuscript for peer review. Sometimes we'll send it back to the authors and ask them to clear some things, especially if it's problems in the title or the abstract. We can ask authors to change some things and get the manuscript in much better shape before we actually send it for peer review. So a lot of journals now, they are really scrutinizing manuscripts at the submission stage. Reject without review is a very common occurrence. I think more than half the manuscripts now that are submitted to journals are rejected without review. But if you do get the manuscript sent back to you and you're asked for changes, these will be some of the changes that you'll be expected to make before you resubmit your manuscript. And then finally, at the end, after I do the live edit, we can address your concerns or doubts about making your manuscript submission ready, and how Editage can help you in this process. So yeah, we'll jump to the abstract. Like this, I think this is the most important part of the manuscript. This is indexed on PubMed. It's a lot of different indexing services will index your abstract, and so many people will see this. So it's very important that you get this part right. So it's a good skill to learn. It's the second most read part of your manuscript after the title, and it's really the key determinant in how many people will actually decide to read your paper. So you want to capture the audience's attention. And as an editor, we look at abstracts very closely, and it's one of the biggest components of the manuscript. That will base our decisions on whether to accept it or send it out for peer review, and we'll really look and see how well written and interesting your abstract is. It also should contain keywords. You'll have a separate area where you can choose keywords, but you also want the abstract to contain these keywords as well. This will help make your manuscript more discoverable by search engines and indexing services. So yeah, I'll go over in the manuscript all of these parts, and we will focus a little bit more on the abstract, but there's also some key parts. For example, the beginning and the end of the introduction are some of the most important parts. The methods material should be well written so others can repeat what you did. And then the results, that, when an editor is looking at your paper for the first time, they'll be focusing on the results and the tables and figures as well. These visual components of your manuscript are very important. And then your conclusions are usually looked at very closely as well. So just in a nutshell, the title, the abstract, the first and last paragraphs of the introduction, the results, including the tables and figures, and then the conclusions. These are the parts you want to focus on the most and have them be in the best possible shape before you submit. So getting to the abstract, it's a very essential part of the paper. 250 words. It should be very concise. You should not have any abbreviations, but if you do use them, you have to explain what they are. So each journal is different, so consult with your target journal. Here's what we expect. We expect that it should be a summary of the entire study in one paragraph and provide all the background and the rationale, like why you did the study, and then the methods, like the results, and finally the conclusions. Here's a good way to look at the abstract. So AB for absolutely, STR for straightforward, ACT for actual. So it should be very specific, brief, clear, and concise, and use abbreviations wisely. Don't forget to check your journal's guidelines. Some abstracts are structured, where they actually have different sections of the abstract, and some are unstructured, where it's just one paragraph. So be sure to look at the journal submission guidelines. And overall, the abstract is like a miniature version of your paper. So it contains the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And by introduction, we mean there's background information and then the rationale, why you did the study. And don't forget to include the key methods, key results, and the conclusion. Usually 1 to 2 sentences are used for each section. So you want to be concise. It's probably the most important part of the abstract. So make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. As a quote by Albert Einstein. So you should eliminate unnecessary words. You should go through the manuscript and try to delete as many repeated phrases or unnecessary words as possible. So, focus on the importance of every sentence, especially in the abstract, and then the overall clarity of the paper, from the words to the sentences to the paragraph to the overall text, and avoid abbreviations and jargon, especially in the abstract. And these are what you don't want to do in the abstract. This is the last slide I have on writing abstracts. So don't present any information that is absent from the paper. Stick to the word limit, so don't ignore the word limit. And don't jump into the problem immediately. Always give context. You want to give some background or some introductory information before you give a statement of the rationale, which is your problem. And again, limit your use of abbreviations. Don't include abbreviations or citations or too much statistical data unless it's specifically mentioned by the journal. So let me go back, and we can do the live edit of this manuscript. So I'm going to stop my sharing and then switch files. Yeah, so the manuscript that we selected for you today, it's a medical paper, and I'll just give you a live edit here. So this has already been typeset, but we went in and we made some changes to this manuscript. While I mentioned that the abstract is the most read part of a paper, the title is the most read part of the paper. So you want to keep the title to 12 or less words. You want to avoid vague words as well. So we even edited the title on this paper. So instead of uncovering, we changed the title to Elucidating the Novel and Putative Immunogenic Targets, utilizing a reverse vaccinology approach against Fusobacterium nucleatum. So this manuscript, and I'm going to scroll down so you can see the entire abstract. As you can see in the abstract, this journal requires a structured abstract. These tend to be, you don't have to edit these as much because they each of these sections is pretty clear. They will give you a 2 to 3 sentence limit for each one of these. There may be an overall word count of like 250 words that you have to stick to, and the abstract just required light editing in this case. There's some good background information. They described the methods in very good detail, and the results. They didn't include a lot of statistical tests. As you can see, that there are some abbreviations here. I guess like MHC. This actually should be defined at first mentioned in the manuscript. And in immunology, and especially genetics papers, there are a lot of what you can be considered jargon. So when you do have these like TLR and also these proteins are they should tell you what these letters mean at first mentioned in the text. So this actually can be improved. But getting to the introduction, and I wanted to show you some comments that we made to the authors. And one of the mistakes in the paper is, the results, were actually results of other studies were put in this paper, and the authors should only consider the results that they obtained and not the results of other papers. So we recommended moving some of these protein identification characteristics to the discussion section, since it's not talking about the author's results. But just going up to the introduction section, the introduction starts out well. There's just some vague wording here, like attracting attention. So there's a better way to say that. You can say it's garnered the interest of physicians and scientists worldwide. They do a good job at explaining the basic diseases from these bacteria in the oral cavity, and they do a good job at explaining like all these acronyms. So PMNs, NK, natural killers, ECM, extracellular matrix proteins. So they do define everything in the introduction. They should have done a better job at defining these acronyms in the abstract, but that's okay. The reviewers may flag that and ask you to provide for some more information. So, the only major rewriting that we recommended for the authors in this part of the manuscript is that when they discuss how this bacterium is resistant to macrolides and penicillin. The original writing was a bit vague, so I'll just read it here. So due to the non-fulfillment of conventional antibiotic therapies, alternative strategies are necessary for the treatment of this infection and its consequences. So that's a bit vaguely written. So we've rewritten that as, given the inadequacy of traditional antibiotic treatments, alternative approaches are essential for addressing infections and their associated outcomes. Here we've cleaned up the writing, and basically it's a good lead-in to the main question that the authors are going to address in this paper. So towards the end of the introduction, it's very important to state the hypothesis that you investigated and the overall goals of your study. Basically, here, the authors state that they completed the complete proteome of this bacteria to find novel immunogenic targets as potential vaccine candidates. So they're looking at target areas of the bacteria for developing vaccines using this reverse vaccinology strategy. And then, as you in your conclusions in the abstract, you want to state the importance, the significance of your study. And that's also done here at the end of the introduction. So the last sentence reads, the results of this study may provide new insights into the vaccinology and pathogenesis of this Fusarium nucleatum. Getting to the other comments. We had some problems with some of the scripts in this paper. So let's see. Yep. So keep track of, look at the author instructions for, when you are using symbols, if you're using equations, and follow the instructions for authors. So there's some problems with the symbols used in this paper. Another thing to check is the results and also the tables and figures. Each of the tables and figures should stand alone, which means the readers should not have to read the text of the article to be able to understand the figure here. This is basically a flow chart. So 6 different steps towards identifying potential immunotargets for developing vaccines against these bacteria. So um, I think the authors stated they have, they're showing their obtained results. They stated this about 10 times in the paper. It's better to say the findings rather than the obtained results. So that's a very common edit that we used throughout this manuscript. Okay, so that was still the methodologies. So we're finally getting to the results. So that was a flowchart more about the methodology. So yeah, here is another area of focus for the manuscript. You want to make sure that this section is as clear and concise as possible. The results should be dominated by tables and figures and not have too much text. So you can see in here that we've actually deleted a lot of, we cut down the word count here and made the manuscript much more readable and just stating the major results first and how the results of the phylogenetic analyses revealed the redundancy of 3 proteins, which I think these were the vaccine targets for the paper. So yeah, there's a lot of short-listed proteins in here. So there's a lot of numbers and letters in here. But they do refer a lot to the supplementary materials, but it does have a nice summary figure here about the potential vaccine targets on the bacteria. So this manuscript is in pretty good shape in terms of the results about identifying. This is about 24 potential targets for the vaccine. Yeah, so yeah, very nice figures for this manuscript. And I'm just going to go to the end of the discussion. So the discussion is nice and short. We recommended the authors to move the results from other studies to the discussion and only discuss their own results. So that's an important thing to do as an author. Yeah, which they did. They did a lot of comparison of all these receptors that were discovered in other works and compared their results to these works. So yeah, very long discussion section. Just kind of surprises me, but they have a nice conclusion section in the end. Actually, just a couple sentences, and they did find good approaches, for their vaccine that they'll be developing after this paper is published, and they really define their next work here. The references is another section that really needed a lot of work. In fact, there is a lot of references in here. They're totally lacking the title, for the paper, and we pointed that out in several instances here, where the title is missing, but the journal is actually given. Let's see, yep, for these. Yeah, so if you look at reference number 16 and number 18, there's a list of authors, there's a journal title, but there's actually no title of the manuscript. So that's missing. So there's a lot of mistakes that were made, but doing a thorough check of your manuscript and checking these key areas that I had mentioned before. This is a very important thing to do before you submit your manuscript. So here, let me go back to the PowerPoint. I gave you a nice overview of the edits that we did. And this is a live document that we were in the process of editing. And let me go back to the slideshow. So, okay, hope everyone can see my slides. All right, so I just wanted to introduce the ambassador program for Editage. And you can earn rewards by helping researchers in your university succeed. You can apply and join us. Um, you know, there's a there's a whole suite of great services that Editage uses, including manuscript preparation, editing your manuscript before you submit it to a journal selection, and a lot of great training opportunities for authors. So you can join our team with the ambassador program. So we can give you a link about how to do that, and you can make some extra income as well. So just to wrap up, I'm going to go back to our goals here, and if anybody has any questions about you uh, after you have your manuscript carefully edited and you have all the files that are ready, and it's ready for journal submission, if you have any other concerns or doubts about getting your manuscript ready for journal submission, please feel free to ask questions, and I think we have about 5 minutes for some Q&A right now. So I'm just going to go back to the end here and thank everyone for their attention. I hope you found the live edit useful. We had a nice live document. You can see all the different sections and the areas of focus for your manuscript, with particular emphasis on the title and abstract, because those are the things that the journal editors will read first. And ultimately, it's the main determinant of how many people will read your paper and ultimately cite your paper, and will ensure that your work, your hard work, gets recognized. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their attention, and I'll answer any questions you may have. Oh, great! You can find some more information on the right here about the ambassador program. So, okay, the first question: what are the common errors or pitfalls that authors often overlook when preparing their manuscripts for submission? Um, Out of the more than 1,500 manuscripts that have been submitted to integrative zoology over the years, um, some of the most common errors occur in the writing. Um, you know, they can you know, they can be simple English errors, or there's too much text overlap with prior literature. Often the manuscripts, they lack hypothesis that's explicitly stated. So when we are checking the manuscripts when they're first submitted, we really focus on the abstract and then the last paragraph of the introduction, just to see what questions that you answered, that you asked, and what hypotheses did you test in your study. So sometimes there's silly mistakes like mismatches of calling out all the figures in the text in the right order. So these are some silly mistakes that can be checked over with a good proofread, either by a colleague, or you can enlist a specialized editing service like Editage. And there's another question here. In my experience, what are the most challenging sections of manuscript for authors to refine, and what advice would I give to tackling these challenges? Um, I think the most difficult section to write is actually the introduction. Uh, the introduction should state the background and also the rationale, and also highlight the knowledge gaps that are in the field. So this is a very complex thing to do. Usually introductions are written towards the end of the overall writing process. And yeah, it's important to identify the knowledge gaps because that explains what the novelty is, and you should also have an explanation about the significance of the study. Why you did it and why it's important to society. Who will benefit from the discovery that is being presented or the gap that is being filled. So these are very important parts of the manuscript, and you can include them in the abstract, in the last paragraph of the introduction, and again in the conclusion section, because you want to. Every manuscript has a main message, and you want to be able to uh, reiterate that. And every manuscript should have this take-home message of what makes it unique. And so authors should highlight the uniqueness of the paper. So that's the advice that I would give. There's another question here. In the editing process, what are some red flags or warning signs that might signal the need for a substantial revision or improvements in the paper? Um, yeah, yeah, we do look at the language and the editing, but ultimately we look at the science. We've had a lot of manuscripts that were submitted. We can tell that the science is excellent, but maybe the presentation or the English is not very good, or it might have a lot of text overlap. So we like to focus on the science, and um, you know even if there is like a red flag of like, oh, there's too much text overlap, these are problems that can be corrected during the writing process. And uh, sometimes the reviewers will help a lot with the writing. Other reviewers will suggest that the authors find specialized editing service. In some cases, the writing can be so bad that it obscures the main message of the paper, and you know, you know, this is a substantial red flag, and we usually send these back for substantial revisions, or even reject and encourage resubmission, because some of these manuscripts cannot be fixed in 1 or 2 months. That's usually required for minor or major revisions. So these authors are given 6 months or even up to a year to resubmit their manuscripts. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. This is from Andrea Hawking. Did you say that tables and figures should or should not dominate the results section? Actually, they should dominate. There should be not very much text and mostly tables and figures. So in theory, the results section can be the shortest section in terms of text. And you should have a good visual component to visualize the data and show the overall trends in your results. So yes, so try to minimize the text in your manuscript. And I think we're just about out of time. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this live editing session, and I hope to see you again at a future Editage event. So thank you very much, and have a good day.